Hello, I'm Rich Healy, and my chapter is Chapter 1, Why a Critical Approach or Critical Theory Approach to Leadership. Basically, critical theory differs from critical thinking in the fact that critical theory is more active. It basically challenges us to look at an organization, find out what are ways that we can improve, what are ways that are we can look to better ourselves within the organization. It challenges us to rethink things that we're doing so that we can grow and improve. Critical thinking is more passive. It doesn't really enact social change like what critical theory does. So critical theory is more of a change agent, where critical thinking is kind of passive, kind of theoretical in scope. Emancipation is the cornerstone to the critical theory approach to leadership. Basically, Simon Western says that people need to be free to express ideas for an organization to grow. When we limit this freedom, people are oppressed. They don't feel like their message can be heard. It's more of a dictatorship or a directive from top-down type of leadership. Simon Western probably would be more in favor of kind of a collaborative type of approach where everybody is valued as a part of the organization, and the only way to have that is through emancipation of the individual. Critical theory has a clear ethical aim to work towards an emancipatory agenda. It then focuses on how to change practices which undermine liberty and to find new ways to promote human agency and freedom. And I go back to a couple examples of like slavery in the United States and the Holocaust in Nazi Germany, that so many valuable resources were used to put down a group of people, and that kind of hindered probably each society from improving itself. And you can just think of the cost in terms of suppressing individuals in society, and that allocates resources away from improving society. The second cornerstone is depth analysis, which this is like the unconscious or the psychoanalysis assessment of the organization, what's going on beneath the surface. As a leader, how I act, does that suppress information? Does that put people down? Does that make people feel less valued? Are people basically feeling comfortable? Are their needs met? So, Freudian type of theory, what is below the surface that makes people act the way they do in an organization. So as a leader, we need to know what's going on below the surface so that we can improve and move forward. I think the biggest thing that influenced me during depth analysis was that if we don't understand those unconscious behaviors, if we don't allow that freedom, and he keeps coming back to emancipation as far as even in depth analysis and the other two cornerstones, looking awry and systemic praxis as the way to move things forward. If we don't relieve some of the unconscious fears that individuals have, we keep doing the things the way we've always done them. And I think that's on a quote on page 12. And when I put in my written text to the video, you'll see that in more detail. So for me personally, those first two things, trying to improve the freedom of my workers, trying to tend to their unconscious feelings or looking below the surface of the organizations, are very difficult. They're not things that I feel comfortable with. As a leader, I want to basically get people moving and moving forward. I'm not very patient, and I think it takes a lot of patience for a leader to meet the needs of the people in the areas of freedom and depth analysis. Looking awry is the third cornerstone. In my master's program at Ball State, we call this looking at things from multiple perspectives. We have always, as school leaders, have had situations arise, And it's not a black and white judgment. We have to look at it from the viewpoint of a child. We have to look at it or a student. We have to look at it from the parent's perspective, the teacher. Some cases, what your superintendent's going to think, what the school board's going to think. So not every decision is just black and white. It's a whole bunch of shades of gray. And I think looking awry allows us to look at different angles in a situation so that we can come up with the best decision to move the organization forward. So I also think looking awry means you can take different leadership routes for certain decisions. If you have an emergency where a child is hurt, maybe in a weight room or something like that, you can't sit there and collaborate, what's the best thing to do? How are we going to do about it? Is everybody in agreement? No, you just got to, call 911, get the bleeding under control, get the student down to the nurse, make sure the parents are called, check your equipment for defections, everything like that. And I'm using that example because that happened last week. So really you don't have time to be collaborative in your approach. But if you're doing a school improvement goal, you want to be collaborative because you want to have a certain amount of buy-in in the school improvement goals so that everybody's working on that. So that's what looking awry does. It allows for different perspectives to look at a situation, come up with the best decision that you can make, and I think it also allows you to use different leadership styles given the context of the situation. Systemic praxis assumes that leaders have a commitment to putting what they have learned on organizational leadership into practice. This also means that leaders need to be aware of the makeup of the organization, the people within the organization, the systems that the organization uses that makes the organization successful or makes the organization unsuccessful or hinders its performance. Quote that I'll use on page 17, any critical engagement, leadership theory, and practice require on to be vigilant of a wider impact of any leadership intervention taken, and conversely to realize how leadership is influenced by other phenomena within a systemic framework. So putting theory into practice and also not giving up on a new program right away. Analyze the data, see if there's a way to improve it, see if you have to improve the people or you have to improve the program. And I think a great leader understands that situation and not to give up. And it also means to be aware of an educational fad. You don't want to just go to, I think a lot of people were going to a block schedule just for the sake of going to a block schedule. You have to have some research behind that. You need to have some sound theory. And then I'm going to go over some of the critical thinking questions now that we have a little bit of background knowledge. Some of the issues that were raised in the reading was in the question to the title. Why the critical theory approach to leadership? My response may be a little bit simplified, but I think that is the heart to the thesis of Simon Western. We use a critical theory approach to leadership because our workers are human, and because of this, they have essential needs, and of most importance is the emancipation or freedom of the individual. So critical theory always keeps coming back to emancipation of the individual as the main way that organization is going to move forward. The employee of an organization cannot be separated from the person who lives at home. Each has unique talents, experiences, strengths, and weaknesses, and a great leader needs to understand this in a way that they can motivate all followers to contribute as much as possible to the organization to be successful. Simon Western mentions in the last part of the chapter before the summary that not one type of MBA program from a college or university can accommodate all situations. On page 21, he states, in essence, critical theory, aims to increase collective human agency and autonomy in order to fulfill human potential. So that is why we study critical theory. We want to get every individual that works within an organization to work towards their maximum potential. To answer questions like 2, 3, and 4 all together, My perspective and assumptions